Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's poppin', fantasy champs? Welcome to Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name's Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me, as always, with Poppin' Ricardo.
What's going on?
And we had an interesting week 10, I think. It's been weird this season, I feel like, for real NFL circumstances, and fantasy's been about the same. But real life, there's a lot of teams that just suck.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of middling teams.
There's honestly only two really good teams, and then there's 20 that's all in the same
same conversation.
Yeah.
If there's any questions about the Chiefs' offense, I think they answered them last night or Sunday night.
Everybody's like, "Oh, it's one game; they're not back." They never left.
What really are the Raiders?
It's been 5. I'll take the 5 years, or what is it? Not 5, but the 3 or 4 years of sample size versus a couple bad weeks.
Yeah, they can have a couple of bad games. Now, on the devil's advocate side, the Raiders do suck. So
they do suck.
They've just lost everything.
Especially their defense.
If you watched any of that game on Sunday night, they just are dead. You lose your head coach.
Blame them.
You lose one of your star receivers.
Head coach, receiver. The guy on the sidelines looks dead half the time. The Raiders are toast. If they had their whole team from the beginning of the year, they actually probably would have been a playoff team.
Yeah, yep, I agree. But anyway, so hopefully you enjoyed fantasy football this weekend. We do have on this episode of the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast waiver wires for Week 11. So we're cruising through Week 11, 12, 13, then 14, and you'll be done with your regular season if you push your playoffs back 1 week. If you do not, and you start the playoffs in Week 14, then congratulations.
Right.
Oh, excuse me. But anyway, so we're going to give you some waiver wire for this week, and then we have a lot of other content planned for the week, so be sure to stick with us. Same as always, same schedule. We'll just roll with it. But anyway, before we jump into our waiver wire, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platforms, please leave a review, share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below any questions you might have for the waiver wire this week.
Yeah, drop them down below.
All right, let's start with the quarterbacks for the waiver wire and jump right in. Is there anyone in particular that you're looking at this week? It can be on this list that we're looking at in front of us, or it could not be on the list for streaming this week.
Yeah, I think what's on the list is very intriguing. I will say before we start, someone who is not on the list, I believe, let me double check. Yeah, who's probably available in your league is Derek Carr. I think we told you guys last week that he's a good streaming option. He had 21 fantasy points. I'm looking at the 5-point touchdown.
Yeah, it might be 20.
I think he had 20 or 19 or so. Either way, it was decent against the Chiefs. He's playing the Bengals this week, which has been okay against quarterbacks. I don't think they've been great, though. So it's another solid matchup at home. If you picked him up last week, you can just keep him on your team and roll with him back-to-back weeks for probably 2 straight 20-point weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say I don't know if this guy is going to be available. It says that he is rostered in 68% of leagues, and he just had a pretty abysmal performance against Jacksonville. And he has Buffalo this week, so I would say not to go after him, but it's Carson Wentz.
Keep your eye on, maybe.
Yeah, somebody keep your eye on, but he just really doesn't have that many easy matchups left in the season. I think the stretch, because he's basically, I believe, moving away from this week's game, if going back to week 7, I believe he's averaged the most points per game at the quarterback position.
Wow.
22, 23, 27.
Except this week.
I think I heard that. Except for this week, obviously getting 7 points. So,
which is so weird because he played Jacksonville.
I'm gonna pull that up. See if I can.
What's up with the Jaguars defense last 2 weeks, huh? They've actually been playing good.
Did they win or did they lose? I can't remember.
They lost to the Colts, but only by 1 score. And then they beat the Bills.
Oh, my God.
So they almost beat the Colts, and then they beat the Bills.
So I'm trying to find the numbers here, but bear with me for a second. Because I really do want to see if what I was saying was true. Week 7 to week 9. Oh, it's not changing now. Good.
Good.
Week
job.
7 to week 9. All right, yeah, I got it right. Here we go. Loading it up. At the quarterback position, because I didn't even click quarterback position. Yeah, Carson Wentz on a points per game basis, down that stretch, QB2. Not a points per game basis. That's just overall QB2. With 64 points. Number 1 was Matt Stafford. So he has been having a really good stretch of games here. But he does have Buffalo, Tampa coming up. And Tampa might be like a mediocre matchup where they might be okay, but Buffalo I wouldn't bother playing. No, I wouldn't. So I just keep an eye on him, see if he continues to perform well, because sometimes it's a random week that he does not do well. Right. But somebody that I think you should add, and this is, some people and Rick sounded like he was a little bit not for this, but I would add Cam Newton. I don't know where that offense is really going to go, but if he wants to save his career, he's going to have to rush all over the field.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's worth speculatively adding him at this point, because if you put him on your team, there's a shot that Cam Newton could come out and be really, really efficient and really, really good. Or he could just suck. But just dropping him, you're not spending draft capital on him, like high value draft capital. You're not really, unless you have small amounts of roster space and you don't want to drop anyone, obviously don't do that. But if you don't really have a quarterback and you're looking for somebody that might be a midseason ad that could be really good, I think speculatively adding Cam Newton and seeing what he does in his first start is a good idea, because it takes away the chance that if he does have a good game, everyone else is going to jump on him the week after. So I would add him, but don't. I would
100% add him if you need a quarterback.
I didn't know if you agreed or not, because you sounded like Cam Newton.
Yeah, well, because it's
gross.
Yeah,
it's kind of.
I mean, but he's going to start this week against Washington, that just lost their best defensive player, Chase Young, towards ACL. In a 12% snap percentage this week, he barely played. He only was in there for a couple plays. He had 11 fantasy points. He also had 3 rushing attempts, 14 yards and touchdown. He's gonna, like you said, he's gonna have to run. As a Christian McCaffrey owner in a league, it makes me sad because he's gonna steal some goal line work.
Yeah,
he 100% is gonna steal goal line work. But he's gonna put up fantasy points, I think, against Washington. I don't know how many.
Yeah.
And if you're streaming, it's definitely a risk, just because we haven't seen Cam Newton really in over a year.
I personally wouldn't start him this week just because of that. But
yeah, that makes me nervous too. But at the same time, it's a juicy matchup against Washington. So I don't know. I have someone ahead of him on my list though. So.
Okay, all right. I was going to bring up Justin Fields. Is that the guy?
No.
Okay, all right.
Not for this week.
Fields had a so there's a lot of people that watched that game, and for one half he looked like a total friggin' trash can bust of a quarterback. And then in the second half, he looked like what we think he can be. And so there were two sides of the coin on Justin Fields.
Yeah.
There are some people who are jumping out and saying, "Oh my God, Justin Fields, he's progressing. He might be the best quarterback in the class right now, just performance-wise." And I would just point you to his interception numbers and his touchdown numbers and his yardage numbers, really anything that would point in the direction that Justin Fields really hasn't been the best quarterback so far of the class, just talking about the first, 10 games of their careers.
Mm-hmm.
That has been Mac Jones. So future-wise, you can rank him however. But if you're just basing the last 10 games, Mac Jones should be ahead of Justin Fields. Now, Fields has clearly, to me, been number 2. Like, Wilson sucks. Lance has barely played. And Trevor Lawrence has been good. But he's also had some really not great performances, and there are some times I watch
Jaguars'
him,
offense is also though.
Their offense blows. So I mean, for me, it's like Fields and Lawrence are like even based on performance so far this year. If like Lawrence, I guess you could say is probably the 2 because he's not statistically better. But anyway, but Justin Fields, he provides the last 2 weeks that he has played. He had 26 fantasy points, I believe, against San Francisco. 26 fantasy points against San Francisco. And then he had about 19 to 20 fantasy points against Pittsburgh. And he provides a really, really good rushing floor of 40 points, which is what he's been consistently doing since week 6. So it's like 43, 38, 103, 45.
Yeah.
And he had his bye week this past week. So I think there's a really good shot, especially against Baltimore, who's been giving up a lot of points to the quarterback position in fantasy football. For him to have a really good week, I think he might be a decent streaming option. But with that being said, this guy could be a second half of the season. I mean, he's got some tough matchups down the stretch, so I'm not even going to, go out on a limb and say what the chances are of this. But he could be a good late second half of the season ad where he ends up starting to break out a little bit, have some really good games, string together some really good performances, and start winning you some fantasy matchups. And so I think there's a good shot that could happen. And I think it's worth a speculative ad at that rate too. So I would say pick up Justin Fields, but I want to hear who your second guy is or your first guy or whatever.
No, I definitely agree with what you said though. Real quick, it's just like Baltimore is another team. We talked about this last week. It just weirds me out because I think of the Ravens and I think really good defense,
right? Like
strength of the team defense, but I guess their defense has been good against quarterbacks this year. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's Tua against the Jets. I think he, like, in games that he has started this year against the Patriots, a very good Patriots defense that has shut down almost every quarterback they've played this year, except for some reason Davis Mills. Tua had 17 points. Against the Jaguars, he had 22. Against the Falcons, he had 28. Against the Bills in a very tough matchup, he still had 16 points. Not bad. In the Ravens game, he played in just the second half. And I don't even think he played the first drive of the second half. It was the second drive and then rest of the game, 46% snap percentage. Right? He had 12 points. He was on pace for 25 fantasy points.
This is Tua,
he played the whole game. This is Tua, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I was trying to keep track.
Yeah. So he's had a very good year fantasy-wise when he's played. And against the Jets, first of all, he's probably still available in your league. He's only rostered in 34% of leagues on Sleeper, I believe. I don't know what. And according to Fantasy Pros, across platforms, he's only owned in 29% of leagues. So he's probably available in your league. It's against the Jets. It should be a very easy matchup for him. I expect him to put up at least 20 fantasy points this week.
Yeah, I think Tua is definitely a good ad. I kind of like every week he's on this list, and I'm like,
I know.
What are people doing?
I know.
Like, why are you not picking up Tua, even though he continually provides good fantasy upside on a week-to-week basis? But either way, yeah, Tua, I agree. Let's move to the running back position, but really fast, Rick. What do you? Mac Jones, the 22 fantasy points. Good schedule down the stretch. No,
yeah, probably not.
Love Mac Jones.
He actually only had 19 because you had the point.
Can't win. Is that what it looks like for a good game on in a non-5-6 point touchdown league?
I mean, I always said 20 was considered a good game.
Yeah, but when you're talking about a 4-point touchdown,
I guess maybe like 18, 19.
Yeah, because it's starting to look like a lot of quarterbacks do that.
Yeah.
But either way. Let's move to the running back position. I think a clear number one ad, and we'll get it out of the way really quickly, is Ramondre Stevenson. I watched that game Sunday, Rick, and I came away thinking, and I know some people will probably disagree with this, but I came away thinking that Ramondre Stevenson is like clearly the better running back than Harris.
Yeah, and this is from a Damian Harris guy. I will say all year, Harris hasn't looked as good as he did last year.
Yeah.
And Stevenson looks very good. I will say, though, that Browns had a horrible rush defense.
Yeah, in that game. It's usually pretty good on the season.
It is usually good, but for some reason, I don't know why it wasn't. Like, there was a lot of gaping holes. But all year, not just this past week, I think Stevenson has looked good when he's been out there.
Yeah. I was saying this. Excuse me. I was saying this to a friend on Sunday that Ramondre Stevenson. I watched a ton of because he was like running back to a lot of people, like running back 6 or 7 pre-draft in dynasty rankings, and I watched a ton of film on Ramondre, and I'm like, okay, he looks good, and then he had his pro day and he ran like a 4.6, 4.7.
Yeah,
it was really slow. It was bad. It was honestly probably the worst like pro day I've ever seen in my life. Or not pro day, combine, whatever. He just the physical like measurables just sucked. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this guy's gonna blow. And then the Patriots took him. And I'm like, okay, relegated to 5th on the roster, red shirt first year. I think you said that.
Yep.
And he ended up playing. And he's playing pretty well. And what shocked me is his explosiveness. Is how
I didn't see that
quick he is, and I was like, I didn't see that on film.
I didn't expect that,
and I obviously didn't see it in the physical measurables. So, I mean, I think he's going to be really good, and I think it's obviously going to be a 1-2 punch with Harris, most likely coming in on first and second down or first down at minimum. But it's going to be a split right down the middle for these two guys. I do like Ramondre, and if something were to happen to Damian Harris, I think Ramondre has a very, very high ceiling. And when I say very high, probably like low mid-range RB2. Similar to where Harris is, maybe a little bit higher, but the difference is for me with Stevenson and Harris fantasy-wise is that Harris is kind of one-dimensional in the fact that he really just does a really good job rushing the football with like his pass catching has been surprisingly horrible, and like every time
he doesn't really get used.
He doesn't get used there, but like every time they swing it out to him, he just gets crushed. I mean, like Brandon Bolden looks better than him pass catching, which is ridiculous. But Ramondre does look decent in the passing game, and it's something where they can use him. He's a multi-versatile back where they can use him in the passing game and they can use him in the running game. And so I think he creates kind of a mismatch defensively where, like, when you put Harris on the field, what are they doing? Running it. When you put Brandon Bolden on the field, what are they doing? Most likely passing it. It's like you kind of get a little bit predictable in that department, and they try to mix it up. They hand it off to Bolden, and Bolden gets smashed to the line of scrimmage because he can't really run. And then it's like they try to pass it to Harris, and Harris can get more than 1 yard. So Ramondre Stevenson provides best of both worlds where he can get on the field and they don't really know what they're going to do. And I notice a lot of times he gets on the field and they, Mac Jones is given 2 play calls and he's either going to check it down or he's going to check it to a run or he's going to pass it down the field. So it could go either way with him on the field, and I think the Patriots are going to utilize that. I don't know how long Damian Harris is out, but Ramondre should be rostered.
No, I agree. There's a chance he misses this game this week, but I guess we'll talk about that on another show.
Yeah, why is he going to miss?
Oh, not Harris Stevenson.
Or
Harris.
Oh,
Harris.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. All right, give me another guy on this list because I think there's only like 2 or 3. We already talked about 1.
I don't know. It's kind of gross. I see Benjamin on the list. He didn't get used that much. It was more the James Conner show. And he didn't have a good week, but to be fair, Colt McCoy also sucked and the whole offense sucked. So if Kyler Murray plays, maybe Benjamin has some face value, but it's still kind of gross. I would say maybe is it Dante Foreman? Dante Foreman. He did have the most carries in the Titans offense. I think he had 8 fantasy points, which isn't anything to write home about. But if he gets 15 touches a week, then 8 fantasy points might be his floor because he was also used in the passing game, which actually isn't too bad. And then he's a touchdown a week from getting like 15 fantasy points. So he's someone to keep your eye on. It's all the talk about Adrian Peterson or McNichols, and it ends up being Foreman.
Yikes! Well, So I watched the beginning of the first game without Henry, and or the whole game. I'm sorry, because what was that, on a Thursday night or a Sunday night or whatever?
It was a primetime game.
It was a primetime game. So I watched the whole game, and I remember thinking the guy that resembled and was the most efficient and resembled Derrick Henry the most for that team
was Foreman.
Yeah. And even though he sucked, I kind of felt like in that game he didn't suck. He had like
five carries. He only had 5 touches, but he had 5 carries for
5.8 yards. Yeah. So he looked good in that game. This week he sucked. Efficiency.
They all suck though.
Yeah, they all suck. Can I say something that triggers me? Because we do need to move quickly through the wide receivers and tight ends, but something that triggers me is the fact that the Titans continue, even though their whole team blows without Derrick Henry, they continue to try to run the ball as much as they did with Derrick Henry, like it's going to continue. It's going to work.
Yeah.
And they were put themselves in so many situations where they were 3rd and long, and it was awful. Sunday was awful to watch. And it's like I think AJ Brown had a total of 4 targets in the game. It's like you gotta throw the ball with Ryan Tannehill.
That's
your
one of the
best
things that
offensive
annoy me the
players
most.
right now.
Has nothing to do with AJ Brown.
Yeah.
Sometimes the Titans will just
try too hard with the run.
Yeah.
But anyway, Foreman is a good ad for me because I think he's going to end up even like measure, like physical build wise, right? Foreman is 6'1", 236 pounds. Derrick Henry's like 6'2", around 240. So like, they're in the same department.
Foreman's a big.
And if I quoted the wrong numbers, I'm not looking at
Derrick Henry's 6'3", 247.
Yeah, so I was a couple numbers off. But anyway,
but still, Foreman for a running back, Foreman's still pretty big.
Yeah, Foreman's big, and I watched him, and I'm like, he kind of looks like not Derrick Henry rush wise, like efficiency wise, but he looks like him stylistically. So, I think that's going to end up being their guy down the stretch, and I think this is a guy that you should definitely add. He does have Houston, New England, Jacksonville, San Francisco, Miami to end the season with one tough game against Pittsburgh.
That's not too bad.
So he could actually be a decent midseason ad here for your team, and I would put some good waiver budget on him. And it's not going to cost you $1 million like the hype train was to get Peterson and Jeremy McNichols and stuff like that. So I'd get him. Outside of that, running backs are pretty bleak.
Yeah, that's probably
if you're looking for a running back, man. We have a 2-flex league with 6-7 bench spots, and it's getting tough at the running back position. Our top waiver wire ads like Benjamin. I think Benjamin. It's like every time a running back becomes available, everyone runs to the waiver wire. Like it's yikes. So anyway, let's talk about the wide receiver position. I haven't really seen where Gallup has been in terms of his development, but he's the number 1 ad so far, according to Fantasy Pros.
Yeah, he came back this week, only had 5 targets, 3 catches, but I guess he's the top
50.
ad.
He
didn't play a lot.
50% of the snaps. Yeah, I think he's probably your best shot at a good midseason ad at the wide receiver position. Dallas has been inconsistent, so I'm a little bit more concerned about the Dallas Cowboys. Not inconsistent like winning-wise or offensively. I mean, they did have a bad game against Denver, but the guy who gets the targets changes almost every week. So, and they don't seem to be throwing it as much as they used to, and that's because they're not losing games. They're
actually winning.
They're actually winning, so they don't need to throw it a million times in trash time. So, yeah, that's starting to become a little bit more of a concern for me for Dallas.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guys like Schultz, like Michael Gallup, Cedric Wilson, anybody really not named Ezekiel Elliott, or just receiving.
Honestly,
the only guy, it's just Amari
Elliott.
Cooper and Elliott. Well, yeah, but Lamb has some bad weeks. He's inconsistent too. So. But either way, it's worth having Mike on one of the most highest powered offenses, one of the highest powered offenses in the league. You want Michael Gallup, so I would add him.
I mean, he should be owned, but the Cowboys' offense is not as good. I think it's good. Don't get me wrong, but fantasy wise, passing wise, not as good as I was hoping because, as you said, they're not throwing it as much this year.
But CD's the guy. So that's all.
He is the guy. I don't know why Darnell Mooney is available in your league. That makes no sense to me.
We have 45% owned percentage.
Yeah, he's Justin Fields' go-to guy.
Yeah, so get Darnell.
He's the wide receiver 1.
I wish he was on the market in our home league. I would add Darnell Mooney too.
Hey, bro, Elijah Moore kind of looking like Brandon Ayuk from last year.
Oh my God! Maybe. I wish I was able to snag that Well, see, I don't know, man. Like, he's clearly becoming the number one receiver, and I believe Corey Davis has been out. Is that...
Corey Davis is still the number one receiver, though.
Has he been out?
Don't get it twisted. He was, but he came back this week and had 10 fantasy points.
Yeah, so Elijah Moore has actually been relatively decent. Still not getting that target share. But he's had 10, 23, and 11 in the last 3 weeks and half PPR. Yeah. So that's really good. He's
getting like 6.5 targets a game. So like he's at least involved now in the offense, but he's not like he's not a wide receiver one.
And he's going to be more widely available in leagues unless somebody needed to start this week. He's owned in 43% of leagues. So I think it's a good ad. I would agree with that. I think it's a very good ad. Stay away from any wide receiver on Carolina besides DJ Moore.
I was going to say, because all of a sudden Cam Newton comes in the game and throws to Robbie Anderson 3 times. So I don't know. Pissing me off as a DJ Moore owner. That
we'll see what happens there.
Robbie Anderson gets 6 targets.
I know. The only other guy here that I would add at the wide receiver position right now is Bryan Edwards. He hasn't had a massive target share, and that's concerning. But he, with the exception of last week, where he scored 0 fantasy points, this week he scored 16, and he looks like a wide receiver one when they throw it to him. And so I think at some point it would be smart for the Oakland Raiders to be like, oh yeah, you know what, we got to start getting this guy the ball.
Vegas Raiders, bro, come on.
Did I say Oakland? How did he do that?
I think Will Fuller.
I was watching a Patriots post-game show, and the guys called. It was like the whole show. They called him the San Diego Chargers.
That's so funny. It's been like 5 years now. It hasn't been 5 years, but it's been a couple years. I would consider picking up Will Fuller if he's available in your league. I don't know if he's not expected to play this week. He's battling a hand injury. He really hasn't even played this year with Tua at all. I think once he comes back, he's going to be at least wide receiver 2 on the team, and he's more of an add and wait and see kind of player. Like, you're not going to just start him, but he is someone who could be very good when he comes back, or you could suck and you can drop him.
Yeah, I agree. And then quickly moving to the tight end position so we can end the show. Conklin caught a touchdown this past week, so I think he might actually be a okay ad again if you need to start a tight end.
Dan Arnold has been on this. He's this year's Chris Herndon.
He's
literally been number 1 on this list every week.
Every single week.
For like 4 straight.
Arnold's, he's had some good games and some bad games. So
he's getting targeted, though, is the thing, every week. He's actually the number 1 receiver in targets.
Yeah, I mean, the last couple weeks he's been good, 10, 8, 11. I mean, that's all you can ask for the wide receiver position. And if they keep targeting the tight end position like they have been, if Lawrence keeps
he has more targets than Marvin Jones the last 5 weeks.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know why Urban Meyer likes Dan Arnold so much, but
yeah, I know, seriously. Is there any other tight ends you want to talk about?
No, I think that's right.
All right, there you go.
I mean, yeah.
Forever hold your peace.
If Logan Thomas is available, pick him up.
Okay.
But we said that last week too.
Yeah. There you go. Wide receiver, tight end, running back, quarterback, waiver wire ads for week 11. It was an interesting week 11. Be sure to get your guys on the waiver wire. Comment down below if you got them on Tuesday if you're watching this later. But anyway, we'll see you tomorrow, guys.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.